Assalamu alaikum, hi, and welcome to day 8 of Islam, the Past, the Present, the Future series. Today's a very exciting subject. Today is essentially about taqwa, so righteousness, piety, some call it God consciousness. But before I get into that, I just wanted to do a bit of a recap for those that might have joined just today. Essentially, what I've talked about in the last session was about positivity, about faith, distinguishing good from falsehood. And this is mainly for Asad because Asad was away yesterday. So yesterday it was about positivity. I showed Dr. Mercer Emoto's research. I tried to combine philosophy with spirituality, with science to see whether we could draw parallels. And here's the thing, I mentioned a few things that people might not have grasped, some concepts which are not orthodox concepts. Okay, because as science has evolved, we've got more data and more information. Therefore, analysis can change with time. The more information you have your perspective change. Okay, your perspective is a function of your knowledge and skills, your experience and exposure, which is all. Everything is a function of time. So as time evolves and your knowledge increases and you get to know more, your skills increase, your experience increases, your exposure increases, you will have a better idea. Or you should do. And so the claims that I've made it with caution. I've not said things out of the blue, right? And I've done it with the saying of Abu Bakr Siddiq in mind, so the companion of the Prophet Muhammad, who said, "Which earth will carry me, which sky will cover me if I speak about Allah without knowledge?" So to make claims of the Creator without knowledge and evidence is a big thing to do. Okay, and who was Abu Bakr Siddiq? Who was, at the highest level? So after Anbiya, and one of the Lee mentioned this, Nolan, one of his tafsir classes, he mentioned that the highest rank a human being can reach is that of a Siddiq. So after prophethood, after Anbiya, Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet. Okay, the highest status a human being can reach is of a Siddiq. A Siddiq is someone who believes without needing the evidence. So we believe without seeing. The prophets had interaction in some way or another with the Creator, direct. Hazrat Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was, and that's why he got the title as-Siddiq. When the Prophet said, when he was known to be truthful, and he said, if there was army over on the other side of the mountain, would you believe me? And then basically people would believe whatever he said, but when he would say that there is a God, when he brought the actual message, people didn't believe him, they refused. Apart from him, Hazrat Abu Bakr. And so even in relative terms, so Sheikh Abdul Rahim from Bury, he came and gave a talk at a Sufa conference in Birmingham Central Masjid, and he mentioned something beautiful. He mentioned the last time there will be people that will have the Imaan like that. This is relativity, okay? Like that of Hazrat Abu Bakr and Hazrat Umar at the end times. And who will be these people? These people will be people that will witness fornication happening on the streets, and they'll say, can you not go and find a private place? Showing that Iman, faith, even in this day and age, has relativity. Okay, that's not to say that we are them or we are like them, but in terms of relativity, in terms of faith, it's like that. Just like the Prophet mentioned that they are his companions, that they were his companions, we are his brothers. But this is for those who wish to understand. And so I've talked about in my previous days, I talked about being tested and the concept of taqwa, and I mentioned, and the personality that I'll talk about, one of my favorite companions is Umar Dalanu, who I've mentioned, Omar, and the concept of being patient and gratitude. Okay, and there's a quote from, it's from the Quran, and that surely, and we will surely test you. Again, I mentioned it tests our filtering mechanism with something of fear and hunger, and loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give good tidings to the patient. You will be put through trials and tests. The end times are the days of fitna, which are trials and tribulations, tests. And so your response is that of patience. Your response isn't that of aggression and bloodshed. And again, so we saw beautiful crystals yesterday from Dr. Masuri Moto, and I tried to correlate things. And here's the thing, there were some crystals on positive values and principles. Okay, so people question what is the positive stuff in Islam, and here's the thing, and the first one, so the first narration that I've put in here is for the youth, Most scholars emphasize on magnitude of deeds. Okay, become a hafiz, recite, learn the entire book off by heart. Okay, but here's the thing, the advice is on the contrary. The deeds most loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those done regularly, even if they are small. Okay, it's about frequency rather than magnitude. Magnitude comes later. But what do? We do it in reverse chronology. We will go for the magnitude first, the child will crumble and go astray. Forget the frequency then. And this is, by the way, this is a universal law of momentum. Okay? Law of vibration. It starts off small and then it keeps resonating. Law of vibration. Bob Proctor mentions that the law of attraction is the second law. The primary law of attraction is the law of vibration. Again, Academy of Champions, we discuss this in much greater detail, but again, it needs much more self-awareness, much more self-discipline, much more reflection, and so I will not be covering it today or in this series. Abu Huraira, again, he's someone I mentioned in the purpose of Islam and life. I think it was either day 2 or 3, but again, he narrated that the Prophet mentioned that beware of envy, for envy devours good deeds, like fire devours firewood. So it eats up good deeds. Envy, a negative emotion. A negative emotion eats up positive deeds. And what is it? Your benchmark is what? In the grave, what did I mention? Good deeds. The Prophet also mentioned that Allah is not merciful to him who is not merciful to the people. So yesterday I also distinguished that the Creator is above creation. The concept of good and evil is within creation. The Creator has described himself as Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. That's the ultimate thing that he's wished to describe himself. These are the core characteristics, the fundamentals. And then and those are also ingrained into the 99 names of Asmaul Husna. And so those people that aren't merciful to the people, right? The Creator is not merciful to them. Again, what you seek is seeking you. If you're seeking the Creator is seeking you. But then here's another part of the equation, the creation. So you can see yourself as an intermediary between the Creator and creation, if you're a leader, especially. So Allah is Ar-Razaq, the provider, okay? An entrepreneur who has a business and has people under him, just as what is written, one person who will be under the throne, a just ruler, okay? Entrepreneur is like the middleman. He's not Ar-Razaq, he becomes a provider. So he's Abdur Razak, so he's like the servant of Allah. He's the middleman for the ones below him who he becomes a means of providence for. So in Urdu, like we mentioned, you become a wasila, a means. And again, it's written, something that I keep mentioning, this is in Ahmad Intermediary. So these books that have been mentioned, for those that are non-Muslims, Bukhari, Muslim, these are books of people that compile these narrations, which again are traced and traced back. You can trace them back, and they were tracked back to the Prophet, um, through lineages of people. So such said this, such said from that, he heard that from that person heard from that person, that person heard from that person. And so they look at the person, who they were, their characteristics were, what were they like, were they noble people, etc., etc. They were criterias and criteria that they used. And so these books are the basic chains of narrations, each one of these, and these give you the authenticity. Anyway, so Ahmed Tirmidhi, again, in those books, it's written that another narration is that he who does not thank people does not thank Allah. He who does not thank people, and yesterday we saw the crystal of thank you and gratitude. He who does not thank the people, and this is an amazing thing. We are in such a blessed age. We've got physiological evidence of what happens in the physical dimension of these spiritual concepts. Make things easy. Do not make them difficult, and give good tidings, and do not make people run away. It's another narration in another place. It's written basically, do not make things difficult for them, and make them calm with glad tidings, and do not repulse them. Another narration, something similar is written, you have been sent to make things easy for the people. You have not been sent to make things difficult for them. Okay, and this narration was linked to incidents where a Bedouin came and he urinated in the mosque, and the people rushed to beat him. But this man came and he urinated in the mosque. The Prophet said, no, he said, leave him. He said, let him do what he's doing, and basically pour a bucket of water over the place where he's passed urine. And then he said, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that you have been sent to make things easy for the people, and you have not been sent to make things difficult for them. Right? And lastly, something that I mentioned also, the ultimate leadership advice. The Prophet mentioned, he who truly believes in Allah and the last day should speak good or keep silent. Okay, and the bottom line is, if I've mentioned anything in the last session and this session that is triggering you, or is not sitting well with you, because you're struggling to comprehend what I'm mentioning, or you're not seeing it from the perspective that I see things, okay? For those, I forgot to mention something, and that is a shortcoming on my behalf, which I accept, which you can attribute to curse of knowledge. Curse of knowledge is where you know so much that you're unable to relate to the average person, which is an illness. So I am still a student of life. I'm still trying to eliminate that. Okay, for those of you that are struggling, go back to the fundamentals that we're taught. And this is something I should have shared first, and this is my mistake, which I'm acknowledging. What is it? Go back to Surat Al-Ikhlas. Stick to that. Don't be bogged down. Okay? What does it say in Surat Al-Ikhlas about Allah? The one source. Qul huwallahu, say He, Allah is one. One. Okay? Tawheed, Wahid, Ahad. Allahu Samad, Allah is everlasting, the eternal refuge. Lam yalid wa lam yulad, neither is he given birth, neither he was born, nor was he born. Wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad, and there is nothing comparable to him, not is there to him any equivalent. Stick with that. And so the point is, whether you want it in a simple manner, whether you want it in a complex manner, the Quran has it. Whether you want it from history, whether you want it from science, whether you want it from philosophy, whether you want it from spirituality, the Quran has it. The Quran is the most comprehensive book. And like I've said, I am not here to create division and divide, rather I'm here for unity. And so let's use the benchmark رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا ومحمدا صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا والقرآن كتابي. Other things that I've mentioned as well, so I mentioned this concept, so I've been really against nationalism and all this capitalism, communism, and then people and democracy, and so racism. I've been spoken that you know, there's no racism in Islam, there's no national. So people are wondering what is a what is a, there's nothing then. Right? Everything revolves around this thing in this day and age, you know. So what is Islam then? What is the actual way? What is the Sunnah methodology that I keep mentioning? What is it? And this diagram for me summed it up when I was in search for the truth of my journey. You know, Islam is the way of that we often hear about. It's the way of moderation. It's actually the middle way, bang on in the middle, which is justice. Okay, it's the way of justice. So the right side equality. You hear about gender equality, right? Gender equality, as you can see in the diagram, is actually gender oppression. There is no such thing as gender equality. What you need is, and this is why I keep saying, you need gender justice. Capitalism is what we live in, the world we live in today. So the global leader, whoever it is in the day and age and time, their energies or their philosophies are they resonate. They end up being in some shape, way, and form found throughout the globe. So in the golden ages, the actual energetics, the levels, the resonance of the golden ages, that mindset, that philosophy was found throughout the globe at that time. So the entire globe felt that energy, those emotions. In a day and age of capitalism, this is what you find. So in the US is the leader at the moment in time. Okay, with China chasing. But the point is, you will see capitalism resonate throughout the pyramid structure. Every country and every individual, to some shape, way, and form, will be following the capitalist mindset. Except those that are going against the tide, that are actually seeking justice, that are on the middle way, that are on the Sunnah. That's what the Muslims pray for, but they do not yet understand, the large majority. The Ahdina Siratul Mustaqim is the middle way, the just way. There is room to go a bit left and right, but not much. Okay, like the quote says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You know, for me, I've often gone fast. Why? Because I wanted to basically fast, because I was seeking the truth. And so if I went and stuck behind different sheikhs and different Islamic teachers, they would have held me back. Right? So you can say I had a capitalist approach to seeking knowledge, to seeking the truth. But once I was there, then I can help people go far. Okay, so there is room for transgression in some cases, and then it comes down to your intention. But if your intention is just to basically maximize profits, as they teach in MBA schools, right? With and basically, so the justification. So you know what? I won't give you. Well, there's a documentary called The 1%, which the son of Johnson the grandson of Johnson and Johnson company. His grandson is made, but he talks about in that basically he's gone to the economists who's of a Jewish faith, and they say that basically to increase the economy you have to increase it by 2%, because historically growth in civilizations happen at 2%. Everything that they say is true. The thing is, if you put an unjust system in place, then what happens is you lead to polarization of society, because the money keeps accumulating at the top. It does not get filtered back to society. So this is when you need just leaders. This is where leadership comes in. Okay, and then so people say, okay, so then democracy, why does democracy not work? I give you the evidence for why it does not work. So then what is the solution? The solution is what the Islamic solution was, which is succession planning. What does succession planning involve? You look at the states and the circumstances and the states at which the situation is in. So this is much more situational based. It's based on meritocracy, which is based on life cycle analysis. And again, these things aren't easy to comprehend. That's why it needs people of substance and people of magnitude. Do you think the Sharia law is an easy thing to comprehend? Do you think people like Abu Bakr and Umar were ordinary men? On this note, so I want to share something. And for those of you, actually, so before I share that thing, those of you that want to know the exact methodology for succession planning and selecting a leader, I teach this in Academy of Champions. But what is justice? This is a funny thing, and equality and justice is also a fine line. Because at the time of Umar, so the law of Umar, so now you see all these laws and everything, right? They were derived from the law of Umar radiallahu anhu. Welfare societies. But here's the thing, let me share a story with you. Umar radiallahu anhu, he would only make lawyers from a wealthy background. So people that were from a wealthy background, only they would be allowed to become lawyers. Now in this day and age, they would say, what? How's that equality? Surely even a bus driver's son should be allowed to become a lawyer. So here's the thing. What was his rationale? His rationale was people that have been brought up and been exposed to wealth, have come from wealthy backgrounds. If you try to tip them off, if you try to give them safarish or rishwat, they call it in Urdu, but basically if you try to give them bribery, because they've been already immunized to wealth, they will not be interested in it. And so they won't take it. And so they will focus on their job, which is bringing about justice. So how can you, if you tip someone off with pennies and he's already got millions, why would he take it? That was the rationale. Why? Because these men were men of wisdom. Now here's the thing. When I shared this story with my teacher, Mlana Siddiq or Rahman, who also I'll mention later on, when we talk about in much more detail from Oldham, he said, Adil, what you say is true. But he said that there is one factor that is even more important. And I said to him, what's that? I said, for me, this makes perfect sense, because I realized this as well. I realized that there was this thing in the UK where people from less well-off backgrounds were being promoted to the areas of knowledge. For example, medicine. They had things like MAP scheme in Manchester. Okay, so promoting other people off that weren't from well-off family backgrounds, giving them, so even if they had lower grades, they would facilitate them into becoming doctors. But here's the thing with that, and here's the thing with this case as well. What's the lack of wisdom in doing these things? Is that although you will promote someone with less knowledge and less capability to become doctors, do you think they will become better doctors? This isn't practicing merit. So what's the fine line between justice and equality? And so Mawlana Siddiq Rahman, he said to me this. He said to me, the key thing is taqwa. righteousness, piety. And then I thought about it. I said, hold on a second. It made sense. Because then I reflected about Pakistan and Bangladesh. How many wealthy people do we have here? But the thing is, in Urdu they say, "Unde tit nahi bharde." That the bellies aren't filled up with how much they have. They always want more. So basically they're being pre-programmed. They've programmed themselves with greed. So from that perspective, I understood what he was saying. He was saying that basically, if you even put someone from a wealthy family background who has been programmed with greed, then he will also be. He won't enough is not enough for him. He will still desire more. And this is where it comes to spirituality, and this is something that you asked me about spirituality, about I think intention. I think it was day one, or day two, where I differentiated between need and greed. I tried to differentiate what is enough. And the thing is, here's the thing: need versus greed. There's a nara, and someone who have not mentioned explicitly, but if I mention they're in the top five. Basically, you've got the richest men in Pakistan. So I was doing some research. The richest man is basically Mia Manshah, number one. Then it's Asif Ali Zardari. Then I think Nawaz Sharif. But the point is, right? The point is, wealth is not a bad thing. Money is not a bad thing. It's defining between need and greed. It's about recirculating that back into society. Okay, so how do you differentiate the two then? Need versus greed. Firstly, you need to define your own capacity. What is it that you need? And the rest which comes to you is a blessing. So Surat al-Kawthar, I listened to Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, and he was mentioning, the verses of al-Kawthar came down to the Prophet when his son passed away, to console him. And the Prophet at the time was penniless, or he didn't have any money, or much money at all. So Allah had already told him, we've given you abundance, we've made you abundant, to console his heart. But that spiritual promise manifested when? When he'd become the king of Arabia. When he'd become the king of Arabia, he had so much wealth, because Hajjatul Wada, so his last sermon, he'd become the king of Arabia. And when he had become the king of Arabia, so much wealth came in. It was coming in left, right, and center. And so that promise that had been made, that promise that Allah had been made to console him, that we've blessed you with abundance. What the Prophet did with the wealth? He bought 100 camels. He bought 100, and camels were the most valuable assets. Of the 100 camels that he purchased, he sacrificed 63 of them with his own hand. He liquidated those assets. And then what did he do? Did he eat those 63 camels? No. The command that was given was then, when you have that money, so the command was given that a day will come when you will have money. And when you have that money, wanhar, sacrifice those camels. And when you sacrifice those camels, distribute them. So know your capacity, know your need. The rest is greed. And the Prophet also mentioned this. He said, the one among you who wakes up secure in his property, healthy in his body, has his food for the day, it is as though the whole world were brought to him. And the thing about this is that this hits the nail on the head. because there was a slogan Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, so one of the former prime ministers whose grandson Bilal Bhutto is actually the leader of the party at the moment. He came up with a slogan, Roti Kapra Makan, food, clothes, shelter. And the reality is, if you have food, clothes, shelter, what else do you need? What else do you need? And so what I want people to do is actually reflect. I mean, when it comes to food, I remember I was in Itikaf and one of the persons mentioned, he mentioned that when it comes to food, right? This is something I'll share with us. When it comes to food, kitni biryaniyan kha lenge? What's the best food? What's the best food in Lahore?
Mostly like the biryani.
Biryani or nihari, okay.
Pie maybe.
Pie, okay. Beyond that, how much more can you go? Right? Okay, so how much pies can you eat in a day?
I don't know. 5.
5, okay. So what I'm trying, and so even clothes, okay. Armani Gucci watches. How many can you wear on an arm and on your wrist? How much can you go? Are you going to wear them on your neck? What can you wear on your neck for the females? How much, so rubies, pearls, how much are you going to wear? How much tiaras or whatever on your heads can you wear? Shelters? How many houses can you have and how big can you have them? Buckingham Palace, how many can you build? Alhambra Palace, how many can you have? How many can you build? What is the theoretical limits for you in this physical realm? And the point is, when you reflect, I said the reality is, let's come down. And so what I've tried to expand your consciousness, and the conclusion that you're probably thinking is, you know what? The reality is we can't even have one. Forget Alhambra Palace, one Buckingham Palace, or even Nawashi's Palace. You know, Jati Umrah. People are struggling for a home. Right? And so in this day and age where the order of the day is capitalism, people need to now get realistic, not materialistic. Question need versus greed. Define your capacities, work within your capacities, then look to grow. And I will show you shortly what that is as well. And these are key concepts which I want to clarify. But moving on, what is taqwa? What is this taqwa that my teacher Siddiq Imaan mentioned? My tajweed teacher. So what did he mention? What is taqwa? And it's amazing because this month where we are fasting, what does it say in the Quran? Quran is the benchmark, the decisive text. It says, "All you who you have believed, decreed upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may become righteous, that you may gain this taqwa." Is fasting all about eating food, or refraining from food and not eating food? Is that all? Is that what it's all about? Is it all about physiological stuff? Refraining from physiological, so not having intercourse, food, water, cutting down your sleep because of the night prayer. Is that what it's all about? And the reality is, like I mentioned, the more I've studied this way of life, the more I've been astonished of the beauty in which that it's been created. I've been amazed by the creator. People have mentioned taqwa in different ways, and I've realized this as well. The Quran bottom line is the Quran cannot be translated. The function of the Quran's translations are the function of the translator. The function of the translator is a function of his knowledge, experience, knowledge, skills, experience, and exposure. That's why you have variations. The narrations are also a function of the reader. The reader of the Quran, the one who's trying to understand, is a function of the reader. Okay, So even those that were teaching me and it wasn't sitting well with me, is because their vibrations weren't aligned with my vibrations. What I was seeking, what they were seeking, were different things, although we were seeking the Creator. What was distinguishing Taqwa and Imaan? Which is already predestined. But anyway, the narrations that I was taught as a kid that became a limiting belief was of Taqwa is this thing, it's this fear of Allah. Now when you teach a kid it's fear, the kid remains in fear. Okay? And that coupled with all these things about hellfire and hardly any talk about Jannah and how to get there, which I focused on in the first few days. Another thing that they would mention, I think it's a narration, but you can't quote me on that. Is this thing about taqwa is described as this thing where basically I think it might have been something that the companion actually mentioned, but again the companion's perspectives were different. It's example. Let me give you an example. I said when you write an email, right? When you read the word, sometimes you misinterpret it. Why do you misinterpret an email rather than when you speak on someone over the phone? Because the phone has emotions. And sometimes when someone says to you something in person is much different to when you see it over an email. Because words are words. When the person says it in front of a person, then those are actual, you can relate to it much better. Right? And so basically the thing that I was taught, or the image that I had in my mind was taqwa was this thing that basically you have to walk so carefully, which is true, and so this is from the companion, this is true, but the understanding of it was false. That basically you have to walk in such a way that basically if there's bushes of thorns on the sides, that the thorns do not prick you. Again, what that's saying is 100% in agreement with what I'm saying. It's about balance, the fine line of balance in need versus greed. But when you tell a kid it's a fear of Allah and it's like being pricked by thorns, right? Those things for a kid do not add up. And what I actually realized it meant was this thing of need versus greed, and it's about balance in life. And what I realized is rather it's the fear of the loss of the love of Allah, the loss of the love of the Creator, or your connection with Allah. That's what taqwa is. That's what I came to realize. It's this connection that you have. And this is what people have referred to. So in the West, they've referred to basically either ultimate consciousness or God consciousness. So this is where Dr. David Hawkins' work, which I'll come on to, comes in. Where the creator or sustainer, the nourisher, realizing about him and his universe and how it operates, having this consciousness, the sunnah of Allah. We call it sunnah of Allah, but like I mentioned, no one really teaches it. I wasn't really taught it. Guess what the West teach it? They call it the creator's code or the universal principles. The creator's code, isn't that ironic? Piety and righteousness. So when you recognize your creator, once creation recognizes its creator, it attains piety by default, righteousness, because it knows if it makes a wrong move, it loses its connection. If it makes a right move, it takes him towards the creator. And this is where it was written, and it was narration. I think I was going to include it. I was trying to put so much in short space of time, but the bottom line is, you gain piety through good actions. This is in one of the surahs in the Quran. So this is what I realized. This was my ultimate realization, that it's actually from chemical engineering. I was a chemical engineer. I was no imam or sheikh or a scholar. Chemical engineering, we're taught what? I said the balance equation. Mizan. What will it be on the Day of Judgment? Will it be this physical thing, the scale? Or could it be that it is a metaphorical thing? Your good deeds need to outweigh your bad deeds. The quality, barakah, that will be added will be based on your intention, sincerity, and the mercy that will be added will be from the Creator. But essentially what I realized was good minus bad, so good company, minus bad company or environment, okay, plus generation. So what generates this fuel that you drive, your spiritual energy, your spirituality, is a function of your good actions. Good actions, deeds, and doing these spiritual things that we've been taught, salah, zikr, fasting, zakat, hajj, charity. They increase your spiritual energy, spirituality. Okay, working on your Imaan, removing fears. And your sins, your bad deeds, your bad actions basically remove your spiritual energy. And the accumulation product is your taqwa, is your Imaan, your spiritual health, and your natural disposition. The accumulation is what the person is. This is why the Prophet mentioned, judge a person based on his taqwa, his piety, not whether he's black or white, Arab or non-Arab. But here's the thing, Allah mentions, Allah, He's the creator, He knows creation. He knows that we are not infallible, and He knows that we all have our shortcomings, we will all be involved in some sort of sins and bad deeds and bad actions. And He also mentions that if people stop sinning, He would destroy the nation and create a nation that would sin and ask for forgiveness. In the eyes of the Creator, people who sin and ask for forgiveness are greater than people that they just do good. Because Allah says, even if a person has a mountain of sins and he asks me for forgiveness once, He will forgive them. Where does this originate from? This originates from the original story where I mentioned, where Iblis made 4 promises, Allah only made 1 back. You do what you like, Allah replied to Iblis, Lucifer. You do what you like, make my servants go astray. As long as they ask me for forgiveness, I will keep forgiving them, regardless of the magnitude of the sin. And I give the greatest sin was what? Shirk. After that, there's also another story, that we come across, is that of a guy that committed 100 murders. And Allah, so there was a guy who committed murders, but then he wanted to repent. He had realized that he had gone astray and he had screwed up big time. And this is me paraphrasing. And so he went to scholars, and the scholars said, there is no way out for you. You're destined for hell. Then he went to this other scholars, and so basically he went to something like the 98th person, and I don't know the exact narration. You can get this from scholars. It's a well-known story because pretty much every Muslim kid knows it, so it's a well-known thing. Well, those that have been exposed to madrasa system know this for a fact. And so he went to like the 98th person. 90th person said, no chance for you, and so he even slayed him. So he was on count 99. Okay, so he went to the 99 person, and 99 person, or the 100 person, said something like, there is a chance, but the thing is, you'd have to go to such and such person in such and such place and ask him what the solution is. And then on his quest to seeking the solution of not basically being punished or finding the truth, he dies on the way, on the path. Okay, and so Allah sends the angels down for His accountability. And He says to the angels, measure the distance on the earth. How close was he to his destination? If he was closer to his destination, then forgive him and grant him paradise. This is what I would imagine, right? If he was pardoned, then he would get paradise. And if he was away from his destination, then, he fell short. And so the angels did the measurements and they reported back to the Creator. They said that unfortunately he fell short. The Creator said, "Oh really?" He said, "Go measure again." And so the angels measured again. And they said, "We've measured it again. And he's actually closer to the destination." And the Creator responded, "Yes, you know what Allah did? He shrunk the earth. Why? Because He's Ghafurur Rahim. He's Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. He's the most merciful, the most compassionate. And so even Allah forgave him." There are stories of, I think, I said you can correct me if I'm wrong. Was it a prostitute that fed a hungry dog or a cat? Was it a cat or a dog? Or was she a prostitute? I can't remember. It was someone basically who wasn't practicing, right? Who would not be regarded as pious or righteous based on our perspective, the human perspective. But for her actions, she was granted Jannah, paradise. Again, humans, we cannot do and base things on human analysis. We are also spiritual beings, but the spiritual analysis, leave it to the Creator. And this is where it's written, Yahdillahu li nurihi man yasha, which I mentioned yesterday. Allah guides to His light whom He pleases, and even up to the last breath. We do not know. We cannot take matters into our own hands. Okay, so the bottom line is this. So I'll go back to taqwa and fasting actually, just something I've realized that I didn't mention. So this is the great thing. So last 10 days are about increasing your piety, right? Your piety, or your connection with the Creator. And the amazing thing is this, thanks to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What I realized from my almost 10 years of spiritual retreats, increasing my spirituality, or for those of the new age, my vibrations, frequencies. Essentially what it was when you give up food, when you don't even care in itikaf, when you go into spiritual retreat, you don't care about your shelter, clothes, you don't care about your family, loved ones. Well, you care about them, but you care about your Creator and connection even more than them. This is the concept of passion in jihad. What you sacrifice for what you deem less and value less for that which you value more. This is sacrifice, this is jihad, this is passion. When you illustrate that by sitting at the gaf, by doing that, when you even disregard your esteem, guess what you reach? You reach taqwa, you reach piety, you reach righteousness, the fastest and the quickest way. This is known as self-actualization. See, achieving your individual potential. Why is it that my supervisor would say, how have you achieved in 1 year that PhD is achieved in 4 years, even though I was a man that was crippled? For those that will read my book that's coming out, Bioreactor, the ultimate bioreactor. Could it have to do that there's a link between spiritual fuel that Professor Salim mentioned that defined it as that spirituality is fuel derived from a sense is fuel derived to drive good actions? Could it be Tony Schwartz is onto something? Energy derived from a sense of purpose? Are all these connections being formed? Are they all irony? Or is this an amazing time and day and age we're living in, where the understanding, as the Prophet mentioned, is increasing with time? But the quantity of those understanding will reduce with time. The knowledge will be taken away by the taking away of scholars. And so here's the bottom line when it comes to taqwa. Okay, If you can't find good company, right, and bad company, your external environment is increasing, bad company is increasing, guess what? Go into rehab. Go to a retreat. This is where Sheikh Imran Hussein's concept of eco-villages come in and people laugh at him. That he's not practical, he's 100% practical. Retreat to the countryside. If the society is too bad for you, it's affecting your Imaan, it's affecting your Taqwa, your connection to the Creator, it's affecting your good actions, retreat. Those of you that it's not affecting as much, sit in itikaf. 10 days. Those of you that it's affecting more, right? Join the Tablighi Jamaat movement. Even though I have my things against them, but you know, that's from a personal perspective, but you know what they're doing, I can't knock. Go join them. They go on 3 days, sit in the masjid. They go on 10 days, they go on 40 days. The issue with them is that they believe that their way is the only right way. And again, they lack tolerance, but that's an issue. But don't let what you can't do stop you from what you can do. But here's the thing, there's multiple avenues. You don't believe in them? Find your local masjid and speak to your local imam and do itikaf there. Retreat. Reflect. Not only that, if you don't want to do that, I teach people how to do it on a daily basis. I said there's a testimony to that. Yeah? What I teach is how to do it on a daily basis. Right? Mindfulness, meditation, etc. These things that are coming out, okay? These things are supplementary. They are not substitutes for salah. They're supplementary stuff. So what I teach in the Academy of Champions, some really advanced stuff, is supplementary stuff. If you're not comfortable with your masjids, and there is a lot of bureaucracy and politics in masajid, unfortunately, these days, okay? Join something that you are comfortable with, but the point is connect to your Creator, come to fitrah, believe in Tawheed, increase your good actions, and work on your Iman. This is the conclusion that I've come up with. And for the Muslims, take Raditu billahi rabba wa bil Islam Medina wa Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam nabiyyi rasulah wal Qur'anu kitabi. Use this as your benchmark. And guess what will happen when you get rid of your external bad environment, your bad circle of friends, or the negative people in your lives? Be it family members, your connection with your Creator will increase. And that is the most important thing. Because what will happen is when you take away your companies, your environments, you can do what you like, you know, you can do your salah, zikr, fasting. So each of the 5 pillars each of the 5 pillars in Islam are the food. Salah is your food. Okay? Hajj is your food. Fasting in Ramadan is your food. Okay, zakat is your food. Iman, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah is your food. Okay, but each of your foods you have supplements. You know your athletes, your sporting athletes, they are high performers. High performers need supplements because the food is not enough. They need more. And it's not out of greed, it's out of need. Their body actually needs more to perform, to achieve their objectives. And so the food for Hajj is what? Umrah, the lesser pilgrimage. Okay, the food for Salah can be zikr or meditation. The food for Zakah is what? Sadaqah, charity. Okay, and so every single thing that is a fundamental, okay, also has its supplement form. So even fasting, for example, we have Ramadan 30 days, but you know what, historically people that needed even more spiritual energy your actual authentic monks and your authentic imams and in the rabbis, this was the thing. Guess what they would do? This was set thing. Get set practice was what? Fasting Mondays and Thursdays. This was the sunnah of Allah. Fasting on Mondays and Thursdays. This was the supplement for those that needed it. And what was it? Why did they need it? Why did rabbis and imams, why and sheikhs need, and why do I say these imams, sheikhs and whatever, they need to be in itikafs? They need to be in, they should be fasting Mondays and Thursdays. Why? Because they are the people that go into the dirty environments or environments with people that have accumulated sins. And and the Creator's chosen them to become the source of bringing the light, the nur into the world, the spiritual energy. And so they attract more of the bad stuff, and so they need to cleanse themselves more frequently, and so they need to renew their energies more, and therefore they need to do things as fasting, the Mondays and Thursdays. They're the ones that need to do more zikr. They're the ones that need to perform more umrahs. They're the ones that need to do more night prayers, Qiyamul Layl and the voluntary prayers, Ishraq, and Chasht, and all the voluntary extra prayers. And these things are a blessing for you guys that I'm speaking to the scholars specifically now. The Creator chooses people to do good as a favor and blessing upon them. When we came to this world, we were nothing. Now that we're here, we're nothing. When we leave, we will be nothing. Sustainability of good actions is in the Creator's hands. The Creator gives you an opportunity to do good as a favor and a blessing on you, for you. The good deeds you take to your graves. And I wish people understood. And so, money is a big hot topic. Okay, everything seems to be turned into business these days. From your charities to your religious centers, your masjids, to your churches. I think it's a Roman Catholic. I think the church owns the most land on the planet. Yes, yet religions preach that money is a bad thing, it's the root cause of all evil. Have you understood what money is or wealth is? Is there something wrong with the message or is something wrong with your understanding? I think there's something wrong with your understanding. Islamically, we know this is false also. Uthman radiallahu anhu, what was he? He was one of the most wealthiest guys. Sulaiman alayhi salam, he had an amazing kingdom. If it was something haram forbidden, a prophet would never take it. Our prophet was given the choice, but he did not say it was forbidden. Okay? If that was the case, he would not even have bought 100 camels. Money is not a bad thing. It's again differentiating between need versus greed. Again, I'll bring it onto the balance equation. So in need versus greed in terms of money, for those of you, again, my business friends, because I know I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, naturopaths, engineers. So engineers, balance equation, your benchmark. Okay, entrepreneurs, key way of understanding this concept is accumulation versus growth. How do you explain this? If you're making, or if you've got £10 coming in as an example, okay, and you give £10, you've accumulated nothing. Okay, if you have got £10 coming in and you give £1, you've accumulated 9. But someone who's made 20 and given 10, he's accumulated 10, he's accumulated more. So although he's earned more, relatively he has given slightly more. So he's given more, but he's also accumulated more. as compared to a guy who has he's obtained 100 and given 100. Right? He's not accumulated 0. Now here's the thing. This might be a bit confusing. Let me summarize it. The objective is not to die of starvation. Right? The objective isn't that you get all your money and you give all your money. That transgresses universal law as well. The actual benchmark is around 2%. That's why zakat is 2 to 2.5%. So if you were to put your benchmarks at 0, this is wrong. I've done this to illustrate a concept, okay, between accumulation and growth. The actual, you can say, is 2 or 2.5%. Because the thing is, if you're going to keep it at 0, then you're not even you basically become, you're not an asset to humanity, which I use as my benchmark. You're not adding value to society. You become a leech and a liability to the system and society intentionally. Right? So the aim and objective is to be an asset and add value for those of you that can. So there are people that we do have unfortunate cases, you know. We do have people, and this is why you need a welfare system, that some people that have, for example, disabilities or unable to earn, some people who've had, have illnesses, and those are the 2 and 2.5% that we should be giving our wealth to. But in order for you to give, you must have. In order for you to have, you need to set your benchmark at least 2 or 2.5% or higher. The thing is, if you set it higher, then make sure it comes down to the 2.5%, so it comes down to need. And it does not increase to extortionate amounts. Like the implants industry, I think it has a markup of something like 400 or 4,000%. Are they giving the rest of 3,000 whatever 990 percent to the society? I don't think so. Right? So the key thing is grow. Increase your growth. If you're going to increase your return on investment, make sure your corporate social CSP is also increasing. CSR, corporate social responsibility. Make sure the money is coming back to society. And so people would often laugh at me when I would say that the most wealthiest guys in Pakistan, according to my analysis, are Edie and Imran Khan. People not often laugh. Why is it? The reason is because how much energy or how much money that they've brought in, and how much that has formed into physical realm, and then that has become a means of distribution into society. Because if they would have shut those doors, right, they could have become as wealthy as, for example, a Mia Mancha or a Nawaz Sharif or a Zardari or a Sayyid Babar Ali or a Lakhani family and all these people. But they chose not to. They chose to do. They chose to allow the money to flow through them. And this is where shukr comes in. This is where gratitude comes in. There's a Sufi group, Maulana Rahman, when I was in Itikaf, he mentioned this. He said that there's a group that the more shukr they do, the more gratitude they do, the more they get. And so what they do is they keep doing gratitude. So they even gratitude for the breath that it takes to do the gratitude. I think I've previously mentioned this also. And so the key point, takeaway from this diagram is focus on growth rather than accumulation. Set your accumulation benchmarks according to the Sunnah, okay? You can tweak them, so you can even increase your ROI if you want to, but then retweak it to make it Sunnah. So some of you that are on crazy amounts of ROI and struggling to handle your money, stick with it then, but then reduce the percentage to increase for your CSR, so it levels down to your need versus greed. And guess what will happen? When you come onto need versus greed, that's when people will not be coming to me and asking me about concerns about the kids, why they've gone astray, or concerns about illnesses. Where do illnesses manifest from? Or concerns about all these problems that we face in society. Because society, if we follow it according to Sunnah, it's the middle way. It is the path. The other thing that I mentioned, which is important to understand again, because I'm talking a lot about energy, and those of you my bioenergetic friends are probably really high at the moment now, because I've disclosed things that I was not able to correlate in the past in a coherent manner. But again, this is the evidence when I say that people in this century that's believed in seeing is believing were led astray. This century and last century, 20th, 21st century. Look at this visible spectrum. Visible spectrum is tiny. Most stuff you don't even see. It's more like believing is seeing. Again, law of vibration, law of attraction. Again, bioenergetics, Academy of Champion guys will understand this in much more detail. This is something I want to share with the rest, just to give again the book that I mentioned, Power versus Force. Power versus Force, written by a medical doctor and a PhD, right? Dr. David Hawkins in 1994. So some of this stuff is a bit outdated. I found it, so I've tried to update some of the stuff to the best of my knowledge. But overall, it stands, and it stands beautifully. So the diagram you see in the middle is his work, and what he found was that people's energies of vibration are he could correlate emotions. So just like yesterday I correlated emotions and words to physiological things, so water crystals, you saw the effects, impacts. Similarly, energy. So what it shows, this diagram shows, is that 0, a person's dead, right? A person who lives in shame and has the emotions of unworthiness, of powerlessness, despondency, despair, and that's why despondency, despair is haram, forbidden in Islam, because it's very low energy. It's close to death. Satan wants you to become despondent and be paralyzed, essentially, in this world. He does it. He wants you to not live and not be an asset. He wants you to be a liability, to be a burden. And so he'll induce shame and worthiness and powerlessness and despair. And that's why the Creator's response was what? Never despair. Come to me walking, I will come to you running. This is what I said yesterday, so I quote the Hadith al-Qudsi. My servant is as he thinks of me. It was beautiful. And so for those of you that didn't listen, I said check it out, check yesterday's session out. Okay. Again, depression, low energy. A person who has high energy is not depressed. It's repression. Repression is where they've bottled up the negative emotion on the behalf of others, and then you see them unleashed. So people that have these psychomanic attacks and all this, that are really high energy, so psychomanic attacks, psycho means psychosis, right? So imagining things. Mania, manic means high energy. So people that have psychomanic attacks, it's not necessarily that they're depressed, it's rather they're repressed. They bottled up the negative emotion inside, and the energy is wanting to increase, and then it results in a psychomanic attack. Because this illustrates that people that are depressed are flat. Grief and fear. In Pakistan, I see fear being the benchmark 100, right? And globally, we're seeing, so global average in 1994 was around 200 courage. That has reduced over time until now, until 2018 when I'm doing this. So that's something that I feel needs updating for those that, and no one's really revised the data as far as I remember, as far as I know, sorry. Again, jealousy. We mentioned today, what was the narration? Envy eats up good deeds as though fire eats up firewood. Again, 125. Hatred, anger. Again, anger is meant to be well, it is forbidden, or it's not. It's strongly spoken against in Islam. You know, I think some places I've heard they say it's haram, right? Forbidden, because anger is from the Satan. Again, low energy to reduce your energy, to create more problems. Pride, discouragement, blame, worry, doubts, confusion. Again, one of the four fundamentals from promises from Shaitan. I'll confuse them. I'll make them doubt. I'll take them away from fitrah. I'll get them to alter themselves. These were his promises. Frustration, irritation, impatience, being overwhelmed. What are these things? Fear, not faith. Okay, and then neutrality, boredom, world average. This is futility, right? The world that we live in actually it's somewhere between 100 and 200, I think, right? 250 neutrality, boredom, because with all this technology, people are just on YouTube watching, or TV flicking through channels, or on YouTube flicking through things, and life has become very futile and boring. Not many people can say that they're very excited every day. Everyone's clocking their 9 to 5 jobs. Okay, then they come. It's the same pattern. It's very boring. We pretend, we pretend that we live exciting lives through these Instagrams and through these Snapchats. But if life was so exciting, why are the statistics showing otherwise? Why is depression rate so sky high? Why is Prozac and all these antidepressants being prescribed at such a rapid rate? If people were really being really excited and happy, if happiness is increasing, why is that depression increasing? The reason is because we are bored and we are largely miserable. Why? Because we have lost our purpose. Why is the first module of the Academy of Champions purpose? And I said, why did it transform your life so much? Why does the truth transform? Because it's something I mentioned yesterday. It's a verse from the Quran. In front of truth, falsehood will perish, because falsehood in its nature is bound to perish. Okay, but anyway, willingness, and then you've got reason and hope. So people that use reason and hope, right, become optimistic. Enthusiasm, happiness, positive expectation, higher energy, love. जुनून से और इश्क से मिलती है आज़ादी. So passion combined with love and above, joy and peace, guess what? It leads to what? Freedom. Motivation Manifesto, Brendan Bouchard. Isn't it amazing? And guess what's after freedom? God consciousness. I don't know, I like the word God, but creator consciousness. This is from the secular scholars. Muslims, what happened? What are you doing? Where are you going? Rabbil Alameen, not Rabbil Muslimeen. He's Al-Alim. Yahdillahu li nurihi man yasha. He's not obliged to help the Muslims and give knowledge to the Muslims. E equals mc squared, c squared, Albert Einstein. Muslims, are we asleep? Were we asleep? We were asleep, yes. Are we asleep? Yes. Are we going to change things? Positive, and the other book that I've included. So this is an amazing thing which I may end on today, or let me just check. No, let me discuss it and then we'll see what we like for time. Okay, so research is showing something on positive. So research is showing that the world that we live in is based on a negativity bias. Okay, so I got this from the Energy Project. What does that mean? That means that so what they found is that for every one negative thing that you say, it takes 6 positive things to neutralize it. So for example, you see on the right hand side, you disgust me. You say that hatred, once that hatred is even manifested even in the cellular level and your body, right? When you say that to a child or whatever, right? You need to say 6 positive things to neutralize that one negative thing. Minimum. Minimum. Because, and this is where it gets more detailed than that, because things like triangle of communication and the depth of your interaction with people has also impact. So for the medics and scientists, the depth of oxytocin bonding level has an impact. So for what they found was for people that have deeper relationships, for spouses, for example, your partners, your wife, your children, if you say one negative thing, it takes up to 20 positive things to neutralize. Let me put this in context. Let me put this in context for those that listen to the news. And the news is largely negative. Okay? For those that listen to 10 minutes of the news, you need to sit there programming yourself for 1 hour on YouTube with positive information or positive things that are happening around the world. For those of you that listen to 1 hour of news, need to sit there for 6 hours programming yourself, your mind with positive information. Have you got this much time in your life? And is it also surprised that why depression is so high? Fear is so high? I also mentioned that bloodshed was blood avoidance throughout Islam. And now the blood that children are being exposed to thanks to the TV and the news channels, it has a psychological impact. Not only that, then it has a physiological impact, which manifests in illnesses, be it mental illnesses, or be it then later cancers or tumors or whatever it is. And so the other thing that I wanted to mention is, so basically based on these, there's so one side of the research has shown this negative bias ratios, right? But here's the thing, there's ratios on positivity, which is funny because they're showing similar findings. So 3-to-1 ratio that will change your life. This is a book that you can read on positivity. Again, the more you focus on positivity, the more energy levels are increasing, the more that they're finding your health's improving, the more that they're finding you're reaching enlightenment, the more you're reaching this ultimate consciousness, the more again, this thing about taqwa. And here's the funny thing, so you see some numbers here. Let me mention the numbers. They found historically, so when they looked at people resonating or vibrating or having the energy of peace, they would be able to influence 10 million people. People that were vibrating on love, they were able to influence 75,000 people. And someone who was God conscious completely, and they said that these were essentially prophets, so Anbiya. So he gives example of Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha, I think, in the book. And he mentions that they were able to impact 70 million people. And so here's the thing, we know, and so what I want people to take away is this thing about positivity. This isn't about this is a positive thing, it's a happy-go-lucky. This is metaphysics. This is not a joke, right? And those that are armchair critics, those that are negative people, I strongly recommend you distance yourself from them. Those that bring your energy levels down, distance yourselves from them. Those that are chronic pessimists, Sheikh Zia once mentioned, stay away from them. Why? Because your why needs to be what? Your why needs to be those 8 doors of Jannah. Your destination is what? Jannah, paradise. As Iqbal mentioned, Naqshe Qadam Nabi ke hain Jannat ke raste, Allah se milate Sunnat ke raste. The footsteps of the Prophet are the ways to the roads to paradise. The Sunnah, the way, the methodology connects you to the Creator, the one source. I wish I could explain this in Pythagoras' theorem. How this is literally true, not just philosophy but scientifically true. In Academy of Champions, I've shown this, and some people have shown this. They've literally been, amazed. And so, and another thing I want to share with you is this: the question is, why is this life based on a negativity bias? Why has the Creator made this life based on negativity bias? Why is there trials and tests in this life? Okay? And the answer is simple. It's a filtering mechanism for the hereafter. For the spiritual realm. Okay? Because here's the thing. If this world was based on a positivity bias, so for every one positive thing it would take 6 negative things. I thought a lot about this, and it's something I mentioned in my book. Then what would happen is we would be static. We would just be sitting. We wouldn't be dynamic. Because by sitting still, what happens now? A person becomes depressed unless he's meditating. Usually, if a person's lonely, so loneliness is, I think, a bigger cause of death than smoking, as far as I can recall from research. Loneliness is leading to depression and leading to people taking their lives, either suicide or death, something like that, right? But the point is, negative bias. We live in a world of negative bias. So by interacting with people, and what the research is showing opposite, so those that interact with people, right, are people that are much more happy, have fewer illnesses. When we were more social beings than mechanical beings, we had less illnesses. And so this is the wisdom, according to what I could think of, for the negativity bias. But furthermore, for the Muslims, the hereafter is based on a positivity bias. We know this for a fact. The scholars mention in Jannah, when you make it, so Mulana Tajmeel, I was listening to him, who's a scholar in Pakistan. He was saying that even a blade of grass, when you stare at the scenery and when you look at things in Jannah, they will get better with time. As a function of time, they will get better. Things in the physical realm now, they degrade with time. Your missus gets wrinkles with time. Okay, we physically degrade with time. Okay, unless you know the universal secret, unless you can look after yourself. So there are ways. But in general, the universal rule. So though, like Allah said, unless you're on the Sunnah. So if you're on the Sunnah, you're actually growing with time. Okay, but the rest things are degrading with time. Those, and in Jannah, basically, the sceneries, everything that you see will be beautiful. Even your wife, she'll look better with time. So we know the next dimension, the next realm, Jannah, that's based on positivity bias. And so what then this life is a way, and this is why ask good in this life and in the hereafter. What was the Prophet's advice? Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. When you narrow the two phenomenons, you realize that the Sirat is just one road from this dunya to the next. You realize how beautiful and perfect this creation is, and the Creator is, because the Creator is perfect. And I will, because we have time, so I'm going to quickly, because we've only got 2 days left now. So what can taqwa do? What can this do? This achieving ultimate consciousness. What's the powers of it? Okay, a man of taqwa. As example, I'll give you Umar radiallahu anhu, right? My teacher Maulana Siddiq Rahman, he shared some amazing. So he gave the example of what taqwa is. I remember his face was glowing also when he shared this. After he shared this, we were walking out of the Masjid Khizr in Oldham. It was so here's what happens. Once you gain this ultimate consciousness, right? It's as this in another narration that Allah says that I become the hands with which the person sees. I become the ears with which he hears. Right? And so, and it goes on. So I'll get that for you tomorrow. But let me just finish this because I'll finish this stuff and then we'll call it a day for today. So Umar radiallahu was a man of taqwa. Right? What happens is creation and elements of creation come under your control. This is what happens. What are the evidence? At the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, there was a trend that would take place. It was a practice, it was an ignorant practice. So Jahiliyyah, a practice of Jahiliyyah at the river Nile. Okay, what would happen is the river Nile used to flow, right? And then for a certain season, it would stop flowing, right? And this was known as the virgin bride tradition. What they would do is they would then get a virgin bride and throw her into the river, and then the river would start flowing again. Okay, so someone came to Umar radiallahu anhu when he was Amir al-Mu'min, when he was the leader of the Muslims under his reign, and he mentioned to him, he said to him, this is what's happening. The river flows, then it stops flowing, they throw this virgin bride, and it starts flowing again. Umar radiallahu anhu said okay. He got some parchment or some paper and he wrote a letter to the River Nile. This is a very famous incident. So he writes he writes a letter to the River Nile. He says along the lines of, "Dear River Nile, if you flow because you choose to flow, right? Then stop flowing. Then stop flowing. Okay? If you flow because Allah makes you flow, then continue to flow and never stop again." And then he signs it off. And he gets the letter, and I think he puts it in something, a bottle or something, and he gives it to the man, and he says, "Gift this from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar, to the River Nile. This is a gift. Give it to the River Nile." So the man takes it, he goes to the River Nile, and he puts it in the River Nile. And it's on record, since that day, River Nile has not stopped flowing. So what water comes under the control? Okay, another incident. There was a fire in Medina that took place in the woods, okay, in the forest, and people started panicking. And they come to Umar radiallahu anhu and they say, Amir al-Mu'mineen, there's a fire, what should we do? You know, they're all panicking. So Umar radiallahu anhu takes his, I think his robe or the cloth that he had, he takes that and he says, use this cloth, and he says that blow the fire out using this. Right? People that came, they took the cloth and started, blowing the fire out with the cloth, and the fire extinguishes. But the fire, wind, Allah makes under the command of a man who's connected, a man of taqwa. Another incident. There was an earthquake in Medina at the time of the Umar again, and earthquake happens, earth starts shaking. Hazrat Umar stands up, gets his staff, smacks the ground, and he questions the earth. He said, what sin has Umar committed that you're shaking? He questions the earth and the earth stops shaking. More, a man comes, even creation respects a man of taqwa. A man comes to assassinate Umar radiallahu anhu. So there was a practice every day. Hazrat Umar would have this practice where he would meditate against a tree. Okay, this is one of the leads that I give for meditation. Okay, I think it was in the evening or after salah. Or in the evening, he would meditate. He would rest against this tree, shut his eyes. And so this man knew of the daily habit and routine that the Umar radiallahu anhu had. So what he did was he thought he was clever. So he thought he would climb the tree. And when Umar radiallahu, when he was resting, he would come down from the tree and he would then just basically cut his neck off. That was his plan. So the man comes, happily climbs the tree. Okay, Hazrat Umar comes as per usual, comes down and puts his back against the tree and shuts his eyes. As soon as he shuts his eyes, a beast, either it was a leopard or a lion or a cheetah, I don't know exactly, I don't know the specifics, but the beast comes and starts circling the tree. He starts circling the tree. And the man, because he's so scared and he's so frightened, he doesn't come down. He doesn't come down. And when Hazrat Umar is done with his meditation, his nap, he stands up and he starts walking. When he starts walking, this man falls down, he comes down from the tree. Hazrat Umar turns around and he says, where have you come? What are you doing? Right? The man says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. He testified and he becomes Muslim. And Hazrat Umar is like, what's happening? And he says, how can it be that I've come to kill you, but even the creation protects you? And so these are the signs of people of taqwa. These are signs of people that are linked with the Creator. And, the last thing that I'll mention is actually last two. How much time do we have? We've got a bit of time. Yeah. So last two or three things that I will mention is basically the people of taqwa. The ones that are connected to Allah. What happens in the spiritual realm? Okay, what happens is this: when a person's connected, Allah says, Allah calls, Allah commands Gabriel, Angel Jibreel. He says, Ya Jibreel, my person has praised me, or I'm pleased with such and such. I want you to become pleased with such and such. Okay, the angel Gabriel Jibreel then goes to the other angels and says, O angels, I am pleased with such and such person, and Allah is pleased with such and such person, so you become pleased with such and such person. Then the angels then go, and the angels then tell the other creation that Allah is pleased with such and such, Jibreel is pleased with such and such, we are pleased with such and such, and you become pleased with such and such, to the point that even fish in the sea praise that person. So the other creation praise that person. And this is what spirituality, this is what taqwa is. And because sectarianism is really rife now in Islam. This is on a bit of a light-hearted note. Again, I've mentioned, Yahdillahu li nuri man yasha. Why have we gone all these, routes? But again, just as on a light-hearted note, was Umar radiallahu anhu a Sufi or a Salafi? Umar radiallahu anhu was such a champion. People know how powerful he was and how much of a leader he was, and people would not mess with him, right? People didn't want to mess with him. But here's the thing, you know, Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he was going through succession planning, again, succession planning, not democracy. There is an element of democracy in the leadership selection criteria, but guess what? Is the democracy that we know today is the last step. There's at least 3 or 4 steps prior to that. But anyhow, the story of Hazrat Abu Bakr, so when he was going through the succession planning process, he had already decided Umar radiallahu anhu to be the next Khalifa, the next Caliph, after him. And to take things forward. But when the rumors or when the word was spreading that this was going to be the case, people were coming to Hazrat Abu Bakr and they were saying that please don't make him the next leader. Okay, the reason why they were saying it was because they said that Umar radiallahu anhu, he's too harsh. He's too harsh, and we can't bear his harshness. And Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu his response was, let him become the leader, and leadership will soften him. And you know what's on record, that the amount Hazrat Umar cried, and he cried so profusely once he'd become a leader. Why did he cry so much? To the point where he had marks on his face of where his tears would flow. The reason was because to become good, you have to be harsh on yourself. If you want to go fast, you have to be harsh on yourself. But once you become a leader, and you know what your benchmark is when you want to go fast? It's yourself. And you know what leaders Allah's blessed them with? Allah's blessed them with immense energy to be harsh on themselves, to expand themselves, to push themselves beyond limits. But you know what? Once you become a leader, you realize that you have to take things far. And when you want to take things far, guess what? Your benchmark is no longer yourself. Your benchmark is your average person. And when you realize the benchmark is average person, you then reflect on that and you become more grateful for what Allah gave you, what you took for granted. And when you reflect on how much Allah blessed you with and how grateful you become, that's what makes you cry. What you took for granted when you were going fast. And that softened you. All this ego and all this, it softened you. And softness and Sufi and Salafi, you know what they are? They're essentially temperaments. We've given them labels, but you know what? As a holistic naturopath, I can tell you, as a very small guy trying to do things with Unani, I can tell you the temperament, mizaj. Salafi strong mizaj, harsh mizaj. Sufi soft mizaj, calm demeanor. And so This is a dalil that Umar radiallahu anhu was more Sufi, or he'd become more Sufi despite being Salafi. Temperament. Another evidence, when he went, on one occasion, there was an occasion where basically Umar radiallahu anhu was traveling towards Sham, Syria, and when they were on their way, the word reached them about a plague that had hit Sham, Syria. So he was left with a difficult decision, whether they would continue onwards or whether they should return back to Medina. Okay, so he stopped at a place which wasn't too far from Sham, so they were more close to Sham. Okay, and so the decision was essentially, should we continue onwards or should we return? And so they did mashwara, so they did some they asked amongst themselves, right? What was the consensus? What was the consensus? And so some of them said, um, basically we should go back, right? And some of them said we should carry on forward. Okay. Those that said we should go back, so those that said that we should go forward gave the dalil, the evidence of the Prophet, that basically the Prophet said that if there's a plague and you find yourselves in the plague, don't leave it. I use your faith. Okay, because Allah is Muhi and Mumit, He's the giver of life and death, so what are you scared of? Okay? And the rest were saying, no, we should use our wisdom and not get in there in the first place and go back to Medina. Allah is also Al-Hakim. Okay? But here's the thing. Hazrat Umar was a guy who, is a guy who would go. He would never back down from a challenge. He was a guy that would push faith to its limits. Okay, he's a man of Taqwa. And so many would have expected him to go into Sham and test the faith. Okay? But he didn't. He decided to go back. So what happened was, essentially what was mentioned was, you left on a mission for the sake of Allah. Okay? So do not let news of the plague prevent you from completing your mission. This is what some people said. Okay? Whilst others said, there's a great trial and continuing onwards will mean certain death. Okay? Therefore do not think that you should, therefore we do not think that you should continue onwards. So this was the thing that he was getting. This was the consultation. From the consultation, the mashra, these were the opinions that were arising. Okay? Then Umar radiallahu anhu, he consulted with a specific group of men from the Quraysh, and they agreed that the entire traveling party, okay, should return to Medina. Okay? So he heard everyone's point of view, right? Then he made up his mind about what he had to do. He announced his decision, right? And he said, verily in the morning I will mount my riding animal for the return of Medina. And then Abu Ubaidah, who was a companion, he said, are you fleeing from the decree of Allah? So like, are you chickening? I'm paraphrasing. So are you decreeing? Are you fleeing from the decree? Are you sort of chickening out? And which was completely on the contrary of what Umar radiallahu anhu was known for. And Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu's reply was beautiful. He replied, yes, we are fleeing from Allah's decree and heading to another one of Allah's decree. Suppose you had camels and you descended into a valley that had two distinct sides. One that was fertile and the other one was barren. If you tended to the fertile side, you would not be doing so based on the decree of Allah. And if you tended to the barren side, would you also not be doing So, based on the decree of Allah. See, Hazrat Umar, radiallahu anhu, he was a man who was blessed with seeing things from multiple dimension perspectives. He was a guy that was blessed of using both of his hemisphere. You know, it's very similar to his saying that if you have two camels, one is sabr, the other one is shukr, I would not know which one to ride upon. You know, and so they decided to go back again. What was this in a leadership role? What did he have? He had more of a soft and a more of a pragmatic and more of a what you would say in this modern day and age is a Sufi approach, soft approach. And I'm really regretting the chickening out example, but it was just to illustrate a purpose. I hope it didn't come across as disrespectful. It was to show that it's for a guy, for someone that a magnitude of his, taking these decisions is a lesson for us, right? It's not macho that's given to us in this day and age, and all this that running bloodshed. It's you have to use your wisdom. This isn't the approach, okay? But here's the thing. I'll end it on this note. I've given to Dalil and the evidence that he had a Sufi response, okay, and one that he had a Salafi response, so he had a harsh temperament prior to leadership. But the bottom, I'll end it on this. Because he was the first out of the four generations, right? Technically, he was a Salafi. Right? So we'll leave it on that note, and I hope you enjoyed today's session. Tomorrow is the 9th session, so the countdown begins. Tomorrow I will be talking. It's very interesting. Tomorrow is a very interesting day. It will be a conspiracy theory field day. So a lot of the youth today are spending their time on conspiracy theories, okay, and the future. So what I've done is I tried to go through the past, giving the product life cycle, the why, hows, and what, and debunking jihad and terrorism, okay. Then the last 2 days I tried to bring you more into the present. I tried to then bring in a bit of science in, a bit of philosophy and spirituality in. I tried to blend them together to give you a much more of a direction of what we should presently be focusing on. Tomorrow again, I'm going to, and so I try to do more positivity stuff. I'm going to tomorrow hit against all the negatives and then hammer home lastly on the last day where I will summarize and concluding remarks for the 10-day series on a positive note. But tomorrow I'm going to focus on a bit more negative and dark stuff. Those of you that have soft temperaments, maybe you don't want to listen to tomorrow's stuff. I would recommend people that are more into Sheikh Imran's saying stuff that are more conspiracy theory aligned. I want to sort of eliminate your negative energies and try to give you much more of a structure. I've got great love and respect for Sheikh Imran and the work that he does, but I'm just going to add my 2 pence into his work. And try to debunk some of the confusions and to give you a bit more clarity and a bit more focus on what the actual response should be. So I hope you enjoyed today's session. I hope you'll enjoy